What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs Series. I want to continue examining 100 years of world championship fights. Monday, August 30th, 1937. World heavyweight champion Joe Louis goes 15 rounds with Wales heavyweight Tommy Farr at New York's Yankee Stadium, the Bronx, New York, in front of 32,000 spectators. Now, Joe Louis was 23 years old. He stood 6 foot 1.5 inches. He weighed 197 pounds. He had a 76-inch reach and a fighting record of 32 wins, 1 loss with 27 knockouts. He was a 5-1 favorite to defeat Tommy Farr. He earned $112,987.52. It was Joe Louis's first title defense after he would defeat Jimmy Braddock in Comiskey Park to become the second black heavyweight champion of all times. Now, Tommy Farr was 24 years old. He stood 6 foot 1.5 inches, weighed 204 pounds with an 81-inch reach. He had a fighting career record of 71 wins, 25 losses, 19 draws, and 18 knockouts. Now, Farr would earn $60,000. Total fight gate was $265,753.11. The movie and radio rights was $60,000. Referee was Arthur Donovan. He scored at 13-1 for Joe Louis. Judge Charlie Lynch had it 9-6, and Judge Billy Kate McPartlin had it 8-5. And after Joe Louis would defeat Jimmy Braddock, he became the heavyweight world champion. He wanted nothing other than a rematch with Max Schmeling. 1937 negotiations fell through, when Schmeling demanded 30% of the entire gate. And he wanted to stage this fight in Germany. Wanted to fight the British Empire champion. $60,000 was offered instead for Farr. That's how that fight came about. Now, we're looking at the Joe Louis and Tommy Farr fight that took place in 1937. Let's listen to Harry Bellows.
15 rounds for the heavyweight championship of the world from Wales, weighing 204.5, wearing black trunks, making his first American pugilistic bout, and recognized as the heavyweight champion of the British Empire, Tommy Farr. Weighing 197, wearing purple trunks, the internationally famous Detroit Brown drummer, recently crowned the new heavyweight champion of the world, Joe Louis. All right, Joe. All right, you just stay around in here and now I understand that boxing men have been fairly instructed by the commission for the rules that govern boxing in this state. That's all. Are those rules that you place in your mind? wish to put your hands on either one of you. But when you break, when I order you to break, I want you to stop hitting immediately, and I insist upon a clean break. Now, if you realize the penalty that goes with a violation, a low blow, if you lose all the benefit of what you do in the line, it's just like one low blow. Now, remember that because it's very important to you. Oh, remember now, I also want you to break soon, and I want you to break when I tell you to do so. And don't shake hands after you leave the center of this room. Yeah? All right. Okay, the best man wins. All right. All right, I insist. I insist. I can't be more explicit. Come on, man. All right, right back to you. All right, that's understood. I'll take care of that part. I'll take care of that part of it. All right, okay.
Referee is Arthur Donovan.
Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. Joe Louis defending his world heavyweight title for the very first time against the tough Welshman here, Tommy Farr. 15 rounds of boxing anticipated.
Get up, come on.
Tommy Farr, former British and Welsh heavyweight champion, reigning Empire champion. And Joe Louis, a very economical boxer, very, very economical mover, and a very hard puncher too. So Tommy Farr really up against it here. And Farr comes into the ring with a record of 66 wins, 18 by knockout, 21 defeats and 13 draws in 100 fights so far. And Joe Louis comes into the ring with a record of 36 wins, 30 by knockout, just one defeat in 37 fights.
One of the reasons why Joe Louis is facing Tommy
One
Farr.
defeat.
Tommy Farr was the British Empire heavyweight champion, and he was James Braddock's mandatory. Part of the agreement of the fight between James Braddock and Joe Louis,
And Joe Louis come out.
that Joe Louis had to take on James Braddock's mandatory
Tommy Farr known
should he
as the
become
Tommy
champion.
Terror
This way Braddock wouldn't have to
from the
pay
Ronda
step-aside
Valley
money,
in Wales.
be stripped of his title, or pay a fine.
And Joe Louis, despite being born in Lafayette, Alabama, is now a native of Detroit, Michigan, known as the Brown Bomber for obvious reasons.
Joe wanted Max Schmeling next, but he had to take on Tommy Farr to meet his obligations, the contract that he signed
Title,
with James
late
Braddock.
round knockout. So far, looking to pick up points behind the left hand. Referee for this one, the very experienced Arthur Donovan. So round 3 of a scheduled 15. And Joe Louis not wasting a single ounce of energy here. Tying up Farr on the inside. First defense, of course, for Joe Louis. Of the
Beautiful right hand with Joe Louis. He's concentrating on the jab because Tommy Farr is a taller fighter than Joe Louis. And Joe Louis has to control the action, and he must do it behind the jab. He just got hit with a right hand because he threw a lazy left jab. He must stay focused when he's in there with the Welshman, Tommy Farr. Beautiful jab by Joe Louis.
Despite that loss to Max Schmeling, there's been some excellent wins on the Joe Louis career, record so far. As I mentioned, Jim Braddock, he took the title off. Wins over Jack Sharp.
Oh, beautiful right hand. The word is out that Joe Louis is vulnerable for a counter right hand because of what Max Schmeling had displayed in 1936.
And 4 then.
And Max Schmeling is trying to display that in his fight.
World heavyweight title.
But Joe Louis had learned a little bit more than he did going into the 36 fight with Max Schmeling.
Wins over Walter Neusel.
And he is bringing his left hand back much better than he did in that fight.
Ben Ford to bring him the Empire title. The win over Max Baer, by the way, overshadowed by Lewis's performance over the same man. It appears that Eddie Phillips was one of Tommy Farr's bogeymen earlier on in his career. Fought 3 times and Phillips won all of them. All of the hard work is done, of course, in the gym. Many rounds of sparring under their belts.
Both men had injured their hands in this fight.
And again, that double left hand for Joe Louis. That's a real nuisance for Tommy Farr.
Oh, beautiful right hand by Tommy Farr.
But takes a left hook.
Joe Louis must stay focused in this fight.
14, a neat, fluid footwork from the reigning champion, keeping him out of trouble. Well, Louis now trying to push the Welshman back. And of course, the harder that Farr tries, the more work Louis will do. But still a
Beautiful display of jabbing by both
from
men.
Tommy Farr.
And we must keep in mind, Tommy Farr is the British heavyweight champion, the best of his country. Joe Louis had fractured his hand, couldn't get the knockout, and he was ridiculed for not having punching power after this fight. But he would display that in the next fight when he have defense of his title against Max Schmeling in 1938.
And Louis is such a good boxer. Such a good puncher. Final round then, and Tommy Farr looked fairly dejected at the end of the 14th. Didn't have a lot of luck. Let's see what he can do here. Can he take the champion out with one punch?
Tommy Farr needs a knockout to win this fight.
Once again, master footwork there from Louis. Well, looks like the Alabama native will keep hold of his title here. First fight outside of Britain for Farr, and he's acquitted himself well, and he's up against the master champion. Well, those middle rounds for Tommy Farr were excellent, but before and after, it's been a tough one, and it looks like Louis kept his title. So Joe Louis should still be the heavyweight champion of the world, but an excellent effort there from the Welshman Tommy Farr.
The winner and still champion Louis.
There There's the official confirmation. Joe Louis still the champion. 13 rounds to 1 and 1 even for the referee.
That was a great fight by Tommy Farr and Joe Louis. Joe Louis remains champion. He's looking forward to bigger and better things. A rematch with Max Schmeling. September 11th, 1937. Freddie Steele knocks out Ken Oberlin. Freddie Steele is to your left and Ken Oberlin is to your right. We talked about Freddie Steele. Very tall. Had a beautiful jab and left hook. And he could punch. It reminds me of Carlos Monzon in many ways. He's from Tacoma, Washington. And he would take on Ken Oberlin, who would eventually have a very good fight with Cerfernio Garcia for that middleweight championship strap. That fight took place between Freddie Steele and Ken Oberlin, September 11th, 1937. It was for the World Middleweight Championship belt. Thursday, September 23rd, 1937. Mike Jacobs would create something that has not been created since 1892. Would be the Carnival of Champions. Took place in New York's Polo Grounds. It was promoted by Mike Jacobs.
I want to show you how.
It was the World Welterweight. Middleweight champion. Cerfernio Garcia would take on Barney Ross, who was the welterweight champion at that time. Garcia was from the Philippine Islands. He would turn out to become a middleweight champion. Wasn't the world middleweight champion. He was a welterweight contender, who, by the way, in 1938 played a significant role in the top 5 ranking system. Well, Garcia would take on Barney Ross. Barney Ross would break his hands, left hand to be exact. But he would muster up enough energy, confidence, to pull that fight off. Barney Ross had earned $35,000. Garcia earned $5,000 in that match. Barney Ross was 27 years old. He stood 5 foot 7 inches. Weighed 143 pounds. He had a 67-inch reach. He walked into the ring with a fighting career record of 71 wins. 3 losses, 3 draws, and 20 knockouts. Had his wars with Jimmy McLaurin. Was in there with Lou Ambers and Tony Canzoneri. Cerfernio Garcia was 31 years old. He stood 5 foot 6 inches. Weighed 146 pounds with a 70-inch reach. Had a fighting career record of 93 wins, 23 losses, 12 draws, and 53 knockouts. Very good fight between those two men. And it was the first bout that took place in the Carnival of Champions, September 23rd, 1937. It was one of 4 fights. What a treat those fight fans had that night. Now, the next fight on that card was a World Lightweight Championship fight between Pedro Martinez and Lou Ambers. Fight would go to 15 rounds. Ambers would remain as lightweight champion. He would take that title away from Tony Canzoneri. Pedro Martinez was 23 years old. Stood 5 foot 5 inches. He had a 68-inch reach. Walked into the bout with a record of 67 wins, 4 losses, 3 draws, and 35 knockouts. Lou Ambers also came into the fight at the age of 23. Stood 5 foot 4.5 inches, and he had a 70-inch reach. He walked into the ring with a record of 68 wins, 5 losses, 6 draws, and 22 knockouts. Lou Ambers would have his wars with the great Henry Armstrong. He would first lose his title to Armstrong. after defeating Barney Ross for his welterweight crown. But he would lose his title to Armstrong. Armstrong would lose his title to Lou Ambers. Let me make that correction. Armstrong would lose the title to Lou Ambers after referee Arthur Donovan would take 5 rounds away from Henry Armstrong. Now see, at that time, you didn't take away points, you took away rounds. So a fighter would never have an opportunity to regain himself. If it was points, he can get a 3 knockdown in 1 round and gain several points. Not when you're dealing with rounds. Lou Ambers had earned $65,000 and Martinez had earned $40,000 in their fight. Harry Jeffer defeats Cisco Escobar and becomes the new world bantamweight champion. The referee would award Harry Jeffer the victory. Cisco Escobar is 24 years old. He stood 5 foot 3 inches. He had a record of 35 wins, 13 losses, 2 draws, and 17 knockouts. Harry Jeffer was 22 years old. He stood 5 foot 4 inches and had a 64-inch reach. He had a record of 45 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, 21 knockouts. Escobar earned $12,500, and Jeffer earned $2,500. The last fight on that card was Fred Apostoli. It's to your left. He defeats middleweight champion Marcel Theo, who was to your right. After being behind on points on all scorecards, Theo was cut over his left eye. Now, who is Fred Apostoli? His name is Alfredo Apostoli. We call him the bellhop. Born February 2nd, 1913 in San Francisco, California. He died November 29th, 1973. He was 60 years of age at the time of his death. Fought from 1934 to 1948. Had a total bout career of 72 fights. 61 wins, 10 losses, 31 knockouts, and he was stopped 4 times. He was 24 years old. And he stood 5 foot 9.5 inches. Weighed 159 pounds. And had a 70-inch reach. Apostoli walked into the ring with a record of 25 wins, 2 losses, and 11 knockouts. As for Marcel Theo, he was 33 years old, stood 5 foot 8 inches, weighed 159 pounds, had a 68.5-inch reach, and he walked into the ring that night with a record of 106 wins, 19 losses, 10 draws, and 49 knockouts. Fred Apostoli would earn $5,000. There's 40,000 in the attendance. And Theo would earn $30,000. Remarkable. That's amazing. So that was the Carnival of Champions, which took place September 23rd, 1937. Promoted by Mike Jacobs. Man, did he clean up that night.